All right, so I believe we are now live on our Wonsulting YouTube channel, and I'm Yumisha D. Elwes. I am a program manager at Wonsulting, and I am so beyond excited to kick off our October Speaker Series event and really understand so many of our dream careers in technology, in business operations, and finance, and in those creative sectors like marketing and product design and graphic design as well. But today I'm especially excited because I am definitely a tech geek and I have incredible tech speakers on the back end for all of you. So let us know where you're tuning in from, the cities that you are coming from. I'd love to see just how international our Wonsulting YouTube is going. I already see Los Angeles, Miami, New York, Manila, Philippines. I knew it was going to be Jamaica. Okay. I love that. You guys are making me so much more excited for today already. So I am going to go ahead and introduce our speakers a little bit more so we can get started, and let's go ahead and do it. All right, so welcome Sang, Phyllis, Sabrina, and Matthew. I do want to introduce who you are a little bit more to our incredible Wonsulting community that is live right now. And I want to introduce first Sang, who is honestly a beast at everything. She goes from marketing to product to tech to strategy. She's also an entrepreneur herself. So thank you so much, Sang, for taking the time to be a part of our series today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. Very nice to be here. My name is Sang, and I am currently a fourth-year marketing and business analytics student at the University of British Columbia. And as Misha mentioned, I guess my interest is very wide range. And therefore, I've been, my first role in product was at a fintech firm called Zhao back in Vietnam, where I'm from. Then I ventured into marketing at Cisco. Eventually, this past summer, product marketing at Ecobee, and now I'm leading a team of 5 to build an app that can help you cook better and reduce food waste called Pecco. So very excited to be here and to be sharing with you guys my knowledge and experience.
Thank you so much, Sang. Definitely go ahead and put hashtag Sang in the chat to welcome her for this incredible series. And I want to introduce Phyllis, who is a product manager at Redfin.
Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Phyllis. I'm currently product manager at Redfin. About 2 months in, I'm also super active in Product Buds, was the creative director there for a couple of months, and also recently graduated from a coding boot camp after graduating from college last year, so recent grad PM.
Absolutely love that. And congratulations as well, Phyllis, for that recent accomplishment. Let's go ahead and put hashtag Phyllis in the chat to welcome her. And next, I want to introduce Matthew, who is a product manager at Indeed. So Matthew.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt. Thanks again for having me here. Yeah, this is, I'm a bit, I guess, older in the field now. This is going to be my second year as product manager at Indeed. I kind of started out in the field and their associate product management rotational program. So it targets people who are relatively fresh grad or about to graduate college. And yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride. Happy to talk more about my experience in this chat.
We are so excited to hear more about your experience too. You guys already know what to do. Let's go ahead and put hashtag Matthew in that chat to welcome him. And last but definitely not least, we have Sabrina, who is a product management analyst at Cisco. So Sabrina.
Yeah, hey everyone. Really excited to be here. Jonathan's a really good friend, and like it's so exciting to see Wonsulting grow to the level that it has. And yeah, I'm currently a product management analyst at Cisco. Matt, I'm on the same page with you. Feel older now. I'm in my second year as well. I went to school at UC Irvine. I studied business economics and information systems. And outside of my full-time job, I am a part-time design student at a design boot camp. So I'm working on a couple side projects related to design. So it's another interest of mine. So excited to be here, and yeah.
We're just as excited to have you as well. And thank you again all for being part of the speaker series. But I think we should just dive right into it and get into the fun part, which are the questions. And I want to start us off with a simple question at first, and that is, what are your main responsibilities in the role that you are currently in? And Matthew, I want to start with you. Again, you are a product manager at Indeed, and PM roles are something that so many of us are interested in. what are your main responsibilities within that role?
Yeah. So this is an interesting question because I feel like the responsibilities vary a lot. But I will say, at least on Indeed, the best way to summarize it is that I'm in charge of defining what this long-term vision for the product is going to be and breaking it down so that we can make iterative progress towards that. So what that might entail is a lot of promoting and sharing this vision with stakeholders. It might be working with teams across the company to say, hey, I think it's a great opportunity for us to do this thing. Here's the data to back it. Here's the research I've done to kind of say this is why this is a good opportunity for us to tackle. And then also then it becomes sort of the day-to-day is working with my team of developers and UX to actually sit down and say, great, we have sort of this North Star idea. How do we get there and how do we measure success? So that's, in a nutshell, the sort of the one-liner, but I can talk more about it if people are interested.
That is incredible. That's definitely a good start. And again, Sabrina, you also are product management, but you also analyze it at Cisco as well. And what are the main responsibilities that come with your job? And is it different than that of just a product manager?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a good question because like Matt said, there's a lot of PM is very different at different companies. And at Cisco, it's a really big company. So there's different levels and different parts of the product that you possibly work with. My team specifically works on buying programs. So that's essentially like a platform of products and services. So as a PM analyst, I wear a lot of hats. Mainly a lot of my responsibilities are working on onboarding new products. So working with, stakeholder, developers, other PMs, UX folks, et cetera, to onboard new products and features onto our program. Also working on new revenue generation, like what are new target markets we could enter, and building out case studies for that. And I do a lot of analysis as well. So we do track metrics, of course, for our program, as well as, creating reports, dashboards, all of that to showcase like our progress to stakeholders, executives. So that's a couple of the main responsibilities.
Right. And again, Phyllis, I know that you also work in PM. How does that differ at your company compared to what we just learned about Indeed and Cisco as well?
Yeah, so what I usually do tends to be writing product requirements documents, but also conducting user testing, doing user research, and then also working on analytics. So I think that Redfin has PMs do a lot more user research and testing than places that might have a whole team of separate researchers and testers, but they really see it as a responsibility as a PM to really get to know your users, and through the testing, that's how we do that.
And saying, of course, you go from marketing to product to tech. What are your main responsibilities, and how does tech play a role in what you do right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I echo everything that everyone said earlier. I think that PM roles vary quite a bit from company to company, especially if you say move from a corporation to a startup role. So for instance, when I was at my first role, product management at Zhao, it's more of an established product. So I got to do a lot of more like UX UI centric product, and therefore did a lot of user testing. And similar at Ecobee, where I did more product marketing things, and that's a lot of creating business case of why is this opportunity worth the money and the time to go ahead. So a lot of financial modeling and market sizing and researching of sorts. But when it's for a newer product, for example, for the app that I'm working on, it's a lot of figuring out things along the way. And that means, one day you could be doing user research and the next day you could be doing something completely different, spending all the time on your Excel sheet. And even for my job at Jupiter, it's more even like managing social media and working with influencers to kind of bring them on board. So I definitely agree that it really varies a lot, and no day is exactly similar.
Right, and that's a perfect segue to the next question as well, because PM responsibilities or any responsibilities in tech can sometimes differ. But what makes you excited to go into work every morning? I know that technically we're virtual, so the most that we're doing is probably transferring to the couch to our table. But what makes you excited to take those few steps during 2020? And I want to start it off with Phyllis.
Yeah, for sure. So I get really excited by the fact that I'm always working on something different. I feel like it would be really hard for me to go in knowing that today's going to look the same as yesterday and the day before and the day before, but that's never true. And that can be really exciting because I might be, doing a lot more user research one day, a lot more design collaboration another day, a lot more analysis or presenting on the next day. And that really allows me to grow in a lot of areas. So that for me is really exciting because I'm always learning something new and working on something different, which pushes me in ways that I can't even imagine at first.
Yeah, right. And definitely go ahead and click that thumbs up button if you're the type of person where you need that new challenge, that new thing every day. I know I definitely am. And Matthew, what about you? What makes you excited to go into work every day?
Yeah, I think I share a similar opinion to Phyllis, which is every day is not the same. It's a new challenge. Some days are harder than others. Some days are pretty simple problems. Some days it's like, okay, I need like a week to think about this problem. But also what it really comes down to is building a product that ultimately helps people. Indeed's a very mission-driven company. And so you can sit down and say, even if you're on the revenue generating side, it's like, great, this could be a ton of money for us, but does it help people get jobs? And if it doesn't, we're pretty open to saying like, no, we're not going to do that. And so I think that's kind of nice. It's mission-driven. You get to wake up and say, if I build this new feature that helps this person, I've done some good. And that's pretty exciting. So I think that's kind of a big driver to get me up early in the morning for some meetings.
Yeah, definitely. And saying what makes you excited to go into work every day, especially with your range of different fields that you're currently in.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that I get to work with so many people from different walks of life and different specialization and department. And I think it's really interesting because I get exposed to people who don't necessarily think like me. And I think diversity of thoughts is so important in kind of honing a comprehensive way of thinking about like whether to do things and how the product should look like. So it's really invigorating for me in that sense. Another aspect is that, especially if you work with consumer product, it's really interesting to think at a strategic level and kind of incorporating that human elements to things and thinking, oh, how can my product translate these pain points that user have into solutions? And it's exciting in the sense that you're always innovating and always collaborating, and I think that's really fun.
I definitely agree. Love the idea of collaboration. And Sabrina, what makes you excited to go into work every day, especially in the tech field?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what everyone else said about, I think working, just being, in this kind of space, working with products, it's always like very interesting. There's always new challenges. There's different ways of doing things. So there's so many ways you can go with any problem. And I think for me, like working at Cisco, it's a very mission-driven company. And I love that I get to be able to work with people of all walks of life also, and work on products that help connect people. And I think that's really gratifying to me. And especially during COVID, when we're all kind of virtual, like being able to work on telepresence products and like collaboration products and seeing how people are using that and how use cases are expanding for that specific technology. It's really interesting to see and be a part of that. So yeah.
I love that. Let us know what makes you guys excited to get up from the bed, get up from the couch, and go into work, go into school, go into your priorities. I know that 2020 has been weird, but we're excited to see what makes you guys get excited a little bit more about that as well. And moving on to the next question, it's a little similar to our first, but what is a typical day like for you in the role that you're in? What did you do yesterday, for example, or maybe even today? What's on your plate? And let's go ahead and kick it off with Matthew.
Sorry, I'm muting myself just to kind of remove any background noise. So yeah, I would say this is probably common amongst all of us is meetings, lots and lots of meetings. But the way to kind of summarize it is really my goal is to try and stay 3 to 5 steps ahead of the team. So if developers are building something, if there's something coming down the pipeline, I really want to be on top of that, make sure I have unblocked the dev team. I already know the analysis of an experiment that will kind of unlock something else here, or I'm setting up new opportunities for the team so that when we finish what we're currently working on, we can immediately jump to the next thing. So that might manifest itself in terms of reviewing designs with UX, running through experiment analysis, data science telling me that I'm wrong, which is pretty common. And then, or even just attending UXR, reviewing results of UXR. The meetings, they tend to change a lot day by day, but the theme is always to try and stay ahead of the team and make sure that we're working on the right things.
Definitely. Go ahead and click that like button as well if you're learning a little bit more as to what your possible dream career in tech, and especially PM roles in tech as well, might entail. And Sabrina, what about you? What is a typical day at work like for you?
Yeah, that question's interesting because I don't think there's like a typical day. Like, you know, every day is very different. Yeah, like a good chunk of my day, it's like way too many meetings and like working sessions with people. And I think a lot of it is also, you know, working, like replying to emails, replying to messages, like we have like chats and messages with our customers and, you know, kind of responding to them about certain things. And yeah, I always block off 2 to 3 hours in a day for like deep work to get to some of the stuff that I need to do. Like if I need to work on certain projects with certain stakeholders, or I need to review something, or hop on a working session with people and be like, okay, we need to get this done, especially because everything's so virtual right now. It's like normally I would be able to go in and like just talk to the dev team or talk to certain stakeholders that are there. But now it's like everything's virtual. So a lot of meetings, a lot of working sessions is how I would categorize my day.
Yes, definitely. And Phyllis?
Pretty similar, you know, classic meetings all day. I would also say for me, because I'm relatively new, it's a lot of investigating, like trying to find who has the answer to what I'm looking for and how can I set up time with them, how can I get the documents that provide me with that information, how can I answer the questions that I currently have in order to, you know, put that all together and present that, right? Because as the PM, like you are the owner and the go-to person for whatever section of the projects we're working on. So being able to have all the answers first requires you finding all of them. So I would say a lot of my day is spent trying to find the answers that I'm looking for. And when there aren't answers, trying to disambiguate what's the closest thing to an answer that I can use right now. And like, how can I build up rationale and like a case for the parts that I can't currently answer.
Absolutely love that. And also don't forget to leave your questions in the comment section below too, since we will be having a quick Q&A session later, and I'm sure all of our speakers definitely want to answer your questions about what it's like working in tech and saying, what is a typical day at work like for you, especially with the app development and everything else?
Yeah, I think it's I kind of echo everything everyone said earlier. It's interesting that how PM roles vary so much from firm to firm, but one common thing we have is that we have a lot of meetings. I think at one point I had like 5 to 6 hour meetings per working day, which is quite insane. So definitely a lot of collaboration and a lot of on these calls, you're kind of confirming a lot of hypotheses that you made and kind of checking in with them, seeing like, oh, is there any holes that we can poke and what can we do better about it? And I guess that's why it took up so much of our time. But also, I guess depending on the life cycle of your product, and the project that you're on, the task would vary greatly. I would say at the more beginning stage is more, customer validation, so a lot of market research and field work. And later on, it's more, testing and working with dev team. So yeah, definitely it varies a lot. And for myself, since I'm still a full-time student, kind of setting out that fixed time to work on things was definitely hard. So we generally, I guess, like work more in weekly sprint and just using our free time as student to work on other endeavors.
Yes, definitely. And I have a feeling that I kind of might know what the answer to the next question is, but especially with all the meetings that were just brought up. But what is your least favorite thing about the work that you do in tech? And I know that meetings are definitely maybe on the top of that list, but if you can give us more examples as to things that a lot of us should be aware of as we go into the tech industry. And Sabrina, if we can start off with you, what's your least favorite thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think my least favorite thing, I mean, it kind of comes with the territory of like the job, but it's also like when there's times where, you're working with a lot of different people and like stakeholders, and sometimes like, you're trying to find the right people, find the right data, which is like such a pain, especially when you're like in a big company. There's like so much data available, and it's like, how do I filter through all of this? And like, who are the right people that I should like validate this with, is definitely kind of, I feel like, a struggle. I worked at startups in the past, and it's easier to navigate that sometimes because you get user research, you create your own data from doing that, when you're first developing something. But when you're in a big company, there's already established processes, there's already systems in place, and that's like kind of what you use to get all your data. So it's hard to filter through. So that's what I would say would be like my least favorite thing to do, especially in this role. And there's been times, I think, like in the beginning, with this role, you have to kind of lead with authority, or without authority. And sometimes that can cause like conflict with different people. And like, that definitely caused like some imposter syndrome for me in the beginning, especially working with people that had like 15 to 20 years of industry experience over me. And I was like, okay, like I need to know what I'm talking about. I need to know what I'm saying. So it was kind of navigating that whole space was a little bit hard, but I think that just kind of comes with any role. And I feel like it helped me be a better PM and be more persuasive. So yeah, that would be some of the things that I least like about the role.
And a lot of us definitely have felt that debilitating imposter syndrome. And so we relate with you on that as well. And Phyllis, what about you? What is your least favorite thing about your job in tech at the moment?
Yeah, I would say honestly related to the last answer of spending a lot of time investigating is the fact that there is no perfect right answer. I feel like school really messes you up because it's like, these are the right answers to the exam. And this is how you study for it. And this is how you know if you succeeded. But being a PM, it's like, there's no right answer. You define your terms of success. You analyze if you actually met your mark or not. And so you can always be wrong. And as a perfectionist, I always want to do the right thing, and I want to make sure that I'm doing things right. But unfortunately, no one can really answer that for me. So learning to drop my perfectionism has probably been like my biggest struggle at work.
Yes, definitely. And go ahead and click that like button if you relate to what Phyllis just said as well about that right answer and how so many of us are still searching for it and everything that we do. And saying, what about you? What is your least favorite thing about your job?
I really loved what Sabrina said, because I feel like that's my exact pain point, especially, as a student still and an intern, and feeling like, I'm such a small person compared to all these industry professional with, years of experience and very high level titles. And it was, I felt like a good chunk of my time was definitely figuring out who to contact and how to get a portion of their time and how to kind of like go and communicate in a respectful way, but still kind of meeting the deadline. Because as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the job for PM is collaboration based, and therefore you need a lot of input from different people. And when you can't, lock them down for a conversation, it's incredibly hard to do. So definitely my biggest thing. And I also have imposter syndrome in that sense, that I'm feeling like, oh, I'm taking this valuable time of the day. It's like they have better things to do than to meet me, but that's totally wrong. You're just trying to do your job. And I think you're all working towards a common goal as a company. So definitely it's something I try to remind myself and kind of hone my communication skill over time to, I guess, like best put it forward to other people.
I absolutely love that. And Matthew, what about you? What is your least favorite thing about being a PM?
Yeah, kind of alluded to this earlier, but I know meetings is the standard answer, but here's kind of why. I think it depends on the person as well. A lot of operational meetings, they drain me. Like there have been days when I close the laptop in the evening and I'm just like, I don't want to move at all. Because you might spend hours just discussing something, and it gets to the point where you're just like, I don't have any brain power left. And so I think that gets mentally taxing after a while. So this comes with the territory. It's part of the job. You're going to have these meetings sometimes. But when they're coming, and that they're not going to be fun. But that's kind of, at least you got to get a bit of a heads up sometimes. So that's just part of the job, though.
Definitely. Yeah, I know a lot of us are definitely feeling that Zoom fatigue and also having to stay in one place and go through 5 or 6 meetings. So that definitely makes sense as to why that would be so difficult. But I want to take a step back. And a lot of our Wonsulting community members are early professionals, students, and sometimes people who are looking for a career change and going through that job search right now. And for all of you, how did you begin your career in technology? Because this field is huge and there's so much that you can do, and I want to hear a little bit more about your backstory and that first introduction that you had into this field. So Phyllis.
Yeah, so for me, it was, so I really liked art as a kid, and I was a cognitive and brain sciences major in college, so I found UX design my senior year as a way to combine my interest in psychology with my love of art. But making mock-ups kind of left me wanting more because I wanted to, have the whole experience. So I started teaching myself how to code, and then I joined a coding bootcamp, and now I have like the end-to-end development experience. But I didn't necessarily want to spend every day coding, so I asked around for some role that would allow me to, think about the user experience and like think about the product in a full way rather than just design, just engineering. And people told me that I should look into product management, and that was about the time that Product Bud started, and I learned a lot from a lot of the events there, and also being an organizer on the team as well. And for me, that's kind of what gave me the exposure that allowed me to know that this is something I really want to do. And from there, getting interviews and practicing for those and trying to learn more about the role until you finally land one. And I have, and I'm still learning every day about product and how to develop those skills. And then I think because I came from like a design and engineering aspect of product, something that I miss a lot of is I don't really have a data science background. So for me, trying to ramp up in terms of analytical information and like pulling from dashboards and all of that querying is something that I'm still trying to build up right now.
And that's really cool how you were able to take your love of art and also combine that into the job that you're doing right now. And for everyone watching, let us know what you want to combine in your tech industry, whether that's art or whether that's design, very much like Phyllis did as well, in the comments below. And Sabrina, how did you start your journey in tech and eventually becoming a PM analyst at Cisco?
Yeah. So it's interesting because when I first came into college, my initial plan was to major in something completely different. I came in as a biomedical engineering major and realized that's not where my interests lied necessarily. I was born and raised in the Bay, so I was surrounded by tech my whole life. So I was kind of aware of the whole scene. And when I was in college, I ended up switching my major to more business economics as well as information systems. So it was kind of like a hybrid degree, and that kind of set me up for a good foundation of both technical and business experience. And then I interned at a couple different startups throughout college, working on different roles. Like I did a data analyst internship, and then I did my first product management internship at a student-founded startup. It was this on-demand service that was users for recycling, and it was a really cool experience. That was my first entry point into PM, and I was one of the first PM interns. So it was really fun to kind of build the platform from the ground up, and that's kind of how I got interested in PM. And then when I joined Cisco, I initially started off as an intern. I was a business analyst intern, and in my org, like being a business analyst, there's a lot of different projects you can work on. It's very cross-functional. And so I worked on a couple different product marketing projects as well as product management projects. And then eventually when I returned full-time, I was able to move to a different team where I was working more closer to product. So that's currently my current role right now. And then after working with, UX folks and kind of getting interested more in design, like I decided to enroll in this boot camp to kind of brush up on design skills and prototyping. And that's kind of where I'm at right now is, working on that. Hopefully, I'm working on a couple of different projects as well, where we're building a couple of different apps. And so I'm realizing, in the beginning, when you first start your your journey into whatever, sometimes things don't really make sense and you're like, am I really going on the right path? But everything kind of comes in full circle in some way, or, you know, like Phyllis was saying, if you feel like you need to learn something and like you need to brush up on certain skills, like you can always learn that. And I think I think that's kind of, having that philosophy is always good for your career, because it'll only make you more valuable and make you more well-rounded. So yeah, that's kind of my path in a weird way.
I absolutely love that. Go ahead and click that like button if you also agree with what Sabrina just said about that philosophy of going into tech. And Matthew, how did you start your journey in tech, which eventually led you to being a PM at Indeed?
Yeah. So growing up in Texas, you don't really get a lot of tech, but I did go to school in Austin, and I went through studying business. So the idea was consulting or investment banking or bust, basically. But I ended up meeting a few guys there in my program who were really interested in building businesses, loved the idea of entrepreneurship, and got lucky. We basically decided to say, hey, let's work on something together, and that ended up being a lot of sort of unofficial product management experience. You know, I spent a lot of time talking to customers, flying out to conferences, meeting with our users, and figuring out what are we going to do, how do we make a product more valuable. We were building mobile apps for universities. And at the time, I didn't know what product management was. It didn't become clear to me until I did a product marketing internship at Google, which is where I actually met Jerry. But that's when I started working closer with product managers there and realizing, oh, that's actually a job. That's way more interesting. How do I do that? And so I think for me, at the end of college, I still ended up working on Start for a bit longer, but around the time where I was about to hit my 1-year mark out of college, I decided I need to do something else. And yeah, Indeed was still hiring for their APM program at the time. So thankfully applied, interviewed, and got in. That's where I am right now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us get confused as to what roles in technology is, and very much like a lot of you about what product management or program management is. And saying, I know that you are a student right now and you are actually majoring in marketing and business analytics, which is different than tech. And so many people in the chat were also wondering, oh, I'm interested in going into tech, but I don't know if I want to major in it exactly. So I'm really interested in knowing, how did you start your journey in tech, and how did not majoring in tech still help you get into the field?
Yeah, for sure. I think I've always been kind of like a very curious and scrappy kid growing up. So when I was in high school, I wanted to do something more entrepreneurial. And at that point, I thought I wanted to be a fashion designer, actually. So I started this small business selling clothes I design and accessory I design, and I ran that for 2 years. And obviously, it's like so irrelevant to like the tech that I'm working on now. But what these personal projects taught me was what I like, and what I like was a fast-paced environment where I get to wear a lot of hats. So coming to university, I kind of knew from those personal projects that I wanted to major in marketing, which I did end up doing. And I think it's, it definitely comes with pros and cons. I think in one aspect, I feel like I got a bit more training in business than technical PMs coming from, an engineering degree. So that's a pro because, at the end of the day, you're trying to, run a business and trying to build something that is commercially viable. So that's an important part. It definitely doesn't equip me, like my degree doesn't equip me for more technical skills, say like multiple languages. And I guess like because it's not an integral part of my degree, it's more of me pushing myself to go out of my comfort zone, saying that, and doing like kind of like a SWOT assessment on my skill, like, this is my strength, this is my weakness, I don't know this many coding language, so I need to go and study it myself. And I think an important part for us, like being a non-technical student especially, is you have to really go out and find opportunities for yourself. But it's important to remember that you have a very different story. Everyone has a different story, but you have a different story in the sense that you bring something new to the table. You bring a fresh perspective. And I think we shouldn't be ashamed of what we study, and we should really leverage it to our strength. Really think back on, what makes you different and how this experience could set yourself apart from other people, but also at the same time learning about industry standards and, what other things you need to learn to, put into your toolbox, because, it will just make you a stronger candidate.
I completely agree. And thank you so much, Sang, for sharing a little bit about both the pros and cons of majoring in tech. And I'm glad that you started that journey so that we can now have you as a speaker for this panel. But let's move on a little bit to the types of skills and abilities and just personal attributes that one might need to have in order to get into tech. And Sang, you said it yourself, where sometimes you have to go and find that opportunity and teach yourself. So if you could share a little bit about the skills or the attributes that a person would need to be successful in this field, what would that be?
Yeah, I think a big part is, as I mentioned earlier, and everyone also, collaboration is a big part. So interpersonal skills and communication skills is very, very important, because you work with so many stakeholders, and some might be more, introverted, some might be more extroverted. So, like knowing that balance, and especially as a non-technical student, I think you should really leverage that. Like, say you're in business school, you definitely, at least in my school, we have a lot of like networking training, for example. So leverage that to, break into the industry, network, get, go and coffee chat with people, but also, do personal project and seek for clubs in your school that can help you, build a new project from the ground up. And therefore what you can learn is project management skill and time management skill, which are, more soft skills, but still very integral to the process. And use that to, leverage that to break into, say, a more startup-y firm, and that you will get exposed to many functions, and from then on build on your technical skills. And that would help you break into more, big tech that traditionally they ask for more technical expertise in the field. So yeah, I think that would be my advice.
Definitely. And let us know in the comments too what a lot of you guys might be working on in terms of refining those skills. What is your 2020 goal for whether it's time management or collaboration, like Sang said? Let us know what you're working on bettering. And Matthew, what skills and attributes do you think that one might need to succeed in technology? Matthew, I think you might be on mute right now.
Yeah, muted myself. Thank you. Force the habit. So I think with tech, everyone's big on data. Being able to sit down and think critically about data and understanding how do you measure impact is a really big skill to have. Most of your work will start with, I have a hypothesis. And so knowing how to measure that, how to prove it to be successful is key. But also, I've worked with a lot of product managers, and like many of us here probably have, a lot of them tenured, a lot of them who have been in the industry forever. The ones that actually stick out to me are those who actually have excellent collaboration and communication skills. It's not the ones who are these boy geniuses or women geniuses who know everything. It's those who are able to influence and get people on board with the vision. And so part of that is key to that skill is really tied to collaboration and communication, I think. So those sort of things you can learn in college. You can do that even just simply getting involved with organizations. You can choose to start your own company, but in a way that's also kind of terrible advice. It's not the simplest thing to do. So these skills you can learn anywhere though, but it's working with other people, knowing how to work with other people is a key part of the skill. And also just how to talk, how to kind of read the soft skills in the room, how to understand when someone's not really bought into what you're saying, and being able to communicate with why. Even sort of conflict resolution, which happens quite often in the job because you might ruffle some feathers. That's also part of communication too.
Yeah, and it seems like soft skills are just as important as those technical skills that a lot of you were talking about too. So I love to hear that. And Sabrina, what are those skills and attributes that one might need in order to be successful in tech?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what everyone said before. And I think, yeah, like there's certain, I feel like with PM, I think, and even just any role within tech, I think there's always like this emphasis on like technical skills or hard skills, but that can always be taught, right? You can always learn that. I think, it's those soft skills that are really important. Like, I think it's really important to be highly organized and proactive, You need to be kind of analytical and data driven and be willing to dig into the data and like form those hypotheses and like validate it. Communication is big, collaboration is big. You need to be able to work well with stakeholders. You need to be able to persuade people, which is something that I realize in this role is like developing that persuasion. Like, you know, sometimes you're going to have this kind of conflict, or people are not going to agree with your ideas, and you need to be able to support your point of view with data and be able to persuade people to kind of see your way. And, you know, definitely like, you know, being able to talk to developers if you're working in a more of a technical PM role, and always being curious. I think being curious and learning, like, especially if you're a student right now and you're trying to break into tech, like think about, you know, the different skill sets that you have right now. What are things that you need to work on? Always try to work on those skills that you feel like would make you a more well-rounded person, and work on side projects. Like even for me now, even now that I'm in the field, I still try to work on side projects or work on some other things to just make sure I never lose touch with that, and always feel like I'm working on something new and always learning something, so that I can always evaluate myself and see like, okay, like these are things that I'm good at, but these are things that I really need to work on. So I think being curious and always learning and kind of being a student at heart is key in this within tech, and especially as a PM.
I love the way that you put that, especially with being a student at heart. And click that like button if you agree about always being curious, always wanting to learn, even if you are already in the field. And Phyllis, what are those skills and attributes that maybe we're still not hitting on that you think we need to be successful in order to be successful in tech?
Yeah, I think a lot of what has been said is very key. I would probably, just similar to what Sabrina already said, like a very strong hunger to learn, right? Because, you know, as was already mentioned, you're starting with a hypothesis and you're trying to answer questions. And as tech changes, and it changes super rapidly, you have to learn to keep up with those changes. You're always learning, and people who are stagnant and companies that are stagnant end up falling away. So being super hungry to learn and keeping that at top of mind, and whether that means learning the people you work with and their communication style so you can better collaborate with them, or learning new techniques to pick up on, because a lot of the coding languages that we use now, right, like they weren't always around. And, you know, a decade from now, the entire landscape is going to look entirely different. And if you're not willing to learn and keep up with that, then you're going to have a really hard time. And then also the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of this is investigative work, like trying to find who has the answers, trying to figure out the closest thing to the right answer, trying to find out whether what you thought would happen is what happened, and trying to figure out how your next steps will move based off of that. That's all founded on eagerness to learn. And even, like I mentioned, user research is a foundation of what I do day to day. And like even user research, asking good user research questions is fundamentally based in not trying to have confirmation bias. And if you're willing to learn, then you're not going to have the bias to just prove what you already know, right? And so I would say that being able to ask really good questions is going to like put you a really long way.
Definitely too. And let us know in the comments how many of you guys are working on side projects right now, because it definitely seems like that consistent theme of working on side projects, being curious, being a student at heart, and constantly challenging yourself. And that goes a little bit more into my next question. And in technology, what kinds of accomplishments tend to be valued and rewarded in this field? And Matthew, I want to start off with you first.
Yeah, so this is an interesting question that I kind of had to think about. So there's sort of the more sort of simple answers, like, for example, how do you get the respect of engineers? How do you get people to trust in your opinion or your thoughts? And part of that is just, hey, what are some quick, easy A/B experiments that we can run? What's some quick wins that we can get for the team? You know, a lot of these companies, you have to remember, everyone's pretty review driven. If people want to get promoted, people want to climb. An engineer who trusts your opinion on an experiment because that led to great impact they could put on their review is actually really good. So I think that's another thing. I think another part of this actually is sort of a philosophy that I keep in mind, but a marker of a good PM, in my opinion, is if you want to switch companies or do something else, would your engineers and those who work with you want to follow? So that comes again back to sort of good communication, good collaboration skills. Can you lead a team? Do you know how to sell a vision? Are you able to sort of take your own bias out of the equation and just focus on objective truths? And I think that's kind of a valuable skill and accomplishment that people tend to recognize, and people will definitely kind of say, all right, yeah, if I work with Matt, he's definitely not going to give me sort of his own biased opinion. He's going to try and come with good data. He's usually on the mark. But also being willing to accept that you're wrong and knowing that oftentimes you aren't going to have the right answer. I think that level of humbleness is a key thing to have as well. So I don't know if that typically answers the accomplishment question, and I can expand on
no, that itself is an incredible answer. And go ahead and click that like button too if you agree with what Matt was saying about, being humble, but also being the type of person that people want to follow, and especially with the people you work with. And Phyllis, what are those accomplishments that you think are valued in the tech field, especially in your position?
I think it's really important to be able to move fast. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of a perfectionist, and with perfectionism, you can move a little slower than you should because you're trying to get it right. Whereas, as there is a foundation to tech is like a MVP, like a minimum viable product, and like just getting something out there and being able to learn and iterate based off of that is something that's like super critical. And like companies that are willing to just put out a lot of different things and like test them really quickly tend to be better than, I don't know, a company that like waits 2 years to release something that ends up being a failure. So I've seen that, being fast moving and being able to change and iterate based off feedback very quickly is super helpful. And then similarly, like in terms of so that's like company wide, and then like as an individual, accomplishments that are really highly valued is honestly like really good people skills. I feel like people don't realize that, but there's just a lot of people who are super qualified on paper, and like being qualified on paper is not going to be the way that you're going to win. Even after, let's say, after you get a job, when you're working with people, trying to win people over, trying to lead without having like direct authority, all of that comes from people skills. So like maybe no one's walking around saying like, hey, you have great people skills, here's like a plaque, but in their behavior and like how much more you're able to get done because of the way that you work with other people, that is highly rewarded.
Definitely. And thank you so much. And again, click that like button, because I definitely believe a lot of our speakers are showing us not just the hard skills on the technical skills and coding skills, but also those people skills and the collaboration that we need in order to go into this field. So I want to actually pass it on to all of you guys to ask questions to our speakers. So we will be starting a Q&A session for the last 10 minutes. And I already got incredible questions on the chat, and I want to go ahead and start with this one first. And in what ways can we use social media to our advantage to effectively represent products and business? And I'll leave it up to, all four of you, since a lot of you do work, again, in so many different departments, as to how we can use that social media to advantage.
I can go first. So I think a big part, and I think it's something that Wonsulting teaches us a lot, is building your personal brand on LinkedIn, right? And because nowadays everyone check your LinkedIn before when they screen your resume. So it's important to showcase not only your accomplishment on there, but also kind of what you're passionate about, a bit of your personality, and make it more, I guess, like personable for the person reading. In that sense, you can also leverage social media to find people who can potentially be your mentor, people you can learn from, your potential teammates, and really reach out for those coffee chats and really network people and kind of learn more about different roles that you are aiming for. In that sense, you will have much better background knowledge going into the organization, as versus just typing out your resume and putting it into an online void. So I think that would be a main thing, really building your personal brand. And I'm sure Wonsulting has many, many resources on that.
Definitely, we do. And what about you, Matthew? What are ways that you might be using social media to effectively represent, products, business, and just the motto of Indeed in general?
Well, I think it's important to know where your users are and understanding what vision you're trying to sell. In the case of Wonsulting, it's very clear. You want to help underdogs turn into winners, and that makes sense. LinkedIn is a great opportunity to sort of sell that vision. So social media has a lot of different channels. Knowing how to build also targeted and personalized content is key. I think as we're starting to see, sort of personalization is a big part of what gets people excited about what you're trying to effectively market or sell. And so I think making sure that when you do use social media, you're very intentional about what sort of content are you promoting. Is it personalized to the user? Are you trying to make an opinion about something? Do you want people to think? I think a lot of ways at a lot of companies, people are like, yeah, just post a Twitter post just so we get at the top of where the feed is that day. But that kind of shows, and people kind of sniff out like, okay, this is messy, this isn't real. But on top of that, also the harder part is constant good quality content. I feel like gets you more promoted in whatever social media channel you're using. So being consistent and also having good content. So this is a long-winded answer to say, be good at social media marketing. But yeah, that's kind of what I've seen be effective today.
Definitely. And Phyllis, again, what are those ways that we might be able to use social media, with that personal brand and understanding where our users are from to effectively represent what we do?
Yeah, as was mentioned, it's honestly being targeted. I think sometimes people get really caught up. They're like, ooh, wow, like so much growth on this platform. And then they just start like spewing into a platform because they think that the platform itself is the power that gives them to like have reach. But it's not. Like, you have to remember the power of social media is the fact that there are a bunch of people who you're giving this content to. And if you remember that, trying to find the right people and making sure that you're giving quality content and actually thinking about what you put out and realizing that the power is in you using the platform, not in the platform in and of itself, because platforms change all the time. They disappear. Like who's on MySpace right now? But imagine there's so many people who might have seen a certain platform as their ticket to, getting that higher reach without actually realizing that at the end of the day, they are the leader of their own account. And regardless of what platform they use, they have to be about putting out value in what they put out. And I really love Wonsulting because Wonsulting does a really, really great job of being really good about putting out content, which means that like if LinkedIn disappears today, I trust and believe that like everything behind Wonsulting will just reemerge as strongly or even stronger on a new platform. So I would say that the key is like to not look for some secret magic formula or algorithm or platform that's going to do it for you, and realize that at the end of the day, you are coming up with the stuff that you're putting out there. And it's about getting that personal brand and that personal connection in everything that you do.
And it's really interesting because this entire panel, it's been a recurring theme that, your soft skills, your quality, your personal brand is just as important as your skills in a lot of those coding languages or in data science or analytics. And that's really interesting to keep in mind for all of us interested in tech. And Sabrina, I want to go ahead and go into the next question about that technical skills that we need. And I think this is a question that so many of us are relating to at the moment because we're learning R, Python, SQL, but what are the coding languages that we should focus on that can help you in a role in tech?
Yeah, this is a good question. And I think mainly for tech roles, or I guess PM roles specifically, I think you're going to work a lot with data, so it's always good to know at least some sort of statistical package, whether that's like R or SQL, so you can filter through like large data sets. I think is always helpful. I always suggest to people like learn like at least one like statistical package, like SQL or R, and then also like a data visualization tool like Power BI or Tableau, so that you can effectively communicate your research and your findings to your stakeholders and whoever you're talking to. In terms of programming languages, this really depends honestly on the type of role you are in within tech. Like if you're working a lot with technical folks like developers, and you would need to know some sort of like programming languages, right? I think Python is kind of one of those languages that's like an entryway. Like I think if you're going to learn one programming language for the first time, I feel like it should be Python because it's very simple to use and intuitive, and it kind of compared to all the other languages out there, I think it's more straightforward. So it depends. Like I wouldn't say I necessarily code in my job. I don't code at all in my role, but I do work with technical folks, so I need to understand what they're saying and what they're talking about, and understand that lingo and be like the bridge between technical and non-technical folks. And then sometimes there's projects where I don't work a lot with technical folks at all, and then it's mostly like I rely on my data skill sets, like working on SQL or Excel and like these visualization tools to go through large sets of data. So it really depends, but I would say mainly try to focus on a statistical package and a data visualization tool to start. And depending on what kind of role you're going for, maybe you might need to learn a programming language, but I don't think it's a hard requirement, to be honest. And I think, again, you can always learn it later on. And there are also a lot of tech roles out there that are more business oriented, that don't require you to know programming at all. So that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah, definitely. And Matthew, if you had to say any technical coding languages that somebody should focus on interested in tech, what would that be for you?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, to the question of what we do as PMs, data analysis is key. What you're describing as R, Python, or SQL is valuable. You do not have to know a coding language to be a good product manager. That being said, it's really helpful because it helps you understand sort of what engineers are saying, the product development lifecycle, where bugs might happen. You can be more proactive with your answers and what you might spend your time asking questions about. I would say if you had to choose between all three, I've seen SQL used most commonly at companies, but also Python is useful too. So regardless, I think Python or SQL is a good place to start. I think R is what I've seen more of our data scientists use. Like they'll spend typically more time using R, but as a PM, Python or SQL is a bit more valuable.
Definitely. And again, thank you guys so much for answering our questions today, coming on this chat as well to teach us a little bit more about what the sector of technology holds. And you guys made it so interesting that I can't even believe the entire hour is up and we only have 2 minutes left. So I'll try to wrap it up and just really say thank you to all of you guys for being panelists. And let's go ahead and spam that chat right now with #thanks in the comments section to show some love, and go ahead and smash that like button as well. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for Wonsulting, because this speaker series has just begun. Tomorrow we will be coming back with business operations and understanding a little bit more about how to break into that field. So Matthew, Sang, Phyllis, and Sabrina, thank you guys for being amazing representatives for the sector of technology and for being Wonsulting winners, honestly. And thank you for being panelists.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll see you all tomorrow. Stay safe.